That's what the lobbies are for. It's difficult to concentrate and to hear what the members are saying. I call David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to take another call on this bill and on this part of the bill to once again affirm the Greens' opposition to this bill. There is a very slim majority, or has been up to now, a very slim margin majority for this bill in the House. But it's becoming very obvious in the media and in public generally that people are understanding what this bill is intending to do, and that the majority in the street, in the public domain, is very much in opposition to this bill. And we are very happy to join that opposition and to voice it in this House. We have no problem with some of the stated intentions of this bill, which are to rationalise what is admittedly a very convoluted, complex array of legislation. We recognise, of course, the police and other bodies need investigative powers, and on occasion they need covert investigation powers. But as has been very eloquently stated by the previous speaker, this bill simply goes too far. This bill sets out deliberately to be a catch-all bill. It sets out to give the maximum possible powers to state agencies, rather than taking a view that we should give the state agencies the least powers that they need to fulfil their obligations, to do their job and to assure public safety. There is an interesting I'll move directly to some of the clauses of the bill, specifically under clause 44, the part of the bill that talks about surveillance, warrants, devices and so on. And the focus in this particular part of the bill is on the ability of state agencies, be it police or any other, to install surveillance devices in private property without warrants for a defined period of time. And yes, that time has been reduced from 72 to 48 hours. But it's extraordinary that agents of the state should have the power under this legislation, and indeed under the proposed amendment from the Minister, or in the Minister's name, to enter people's houses, to break into people's premises or areas or their vehicles, to interfere with vehicles, to install, using whatever force is necessary, these covert surveillance devices, to add insult to injury, to even plug into the electricity of somebody's home or business premises to power up these devices. This is extraordinary that a police officer, that an agent of other agents of the state, other state agencies should have the power to actually break into people's homes, actually steal their vehicles and then return them, or to put these devices in unknowing, on suspicion, reasonable suspicion, which is a fairly low bar, we must say, that a crime has been committed or is being committed or indeed might be committed. Those are very, very low bars to protect the right of privacy. Basic civil liberties are at stake here, and we think it's important in this part that people are aware of the very, very considerable powers that would be given for warrantless intrusion into people's home, their business premises, their vehicles, places where people ought to feel that they have a reasonable level of security, of privacy. And the fact that this can be done without warrant, even for a shorter period of 48 hours, we think is simply a step too far. There is absolutely no proven necessity for these quite draconian measures that this bill proposes and that this part of the bill proposes. We are in a place, we are not under immediate threat from major terrorist groups, despite the best efforts on occasion to paint certain individuals in that light. The need simply does not exist for these extraordinarily powerful provisions in this bill to, for example, around the warrantless insertion of surveillance devices, even in people's homes. The issue of production orders has excited considerable interest in the media, among other places, and I think that's appropriate. The Herald, which is not noticed as the most radical media that's ever been seen, that enjoyed the appellation Granny Herald at one time. The Herald editorial acknowledges that this bill simply goes too far. The notion of production orders. There is a clear indication in the provisions around production orders around self-incrimination, and this was referred to by a previous speaker. Within the provisions of this bill, a person is absolutely a person under suspicion, so-called reasonable suspicion, can be obliged to incriminate themselves or to involve other people in incriminating themselves. And for a very, very long time, for centuries, there has been common law understanding,
David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There has been a common law assumption, a belief, a convention that people ought not to be obliged to incriminate themselves. That is the job of the police and the courts. The police to bring evidence, to accuse, to deliver evidence of wrongdoing, and of course the court's role to judge on that. The notion that people should be obliged to be complicit in their own conviction is simply anathema. Yes, we understand that we want to prevent commission of crime. We want to ensure that people who undertake criminal activities should be taken to task and should suffer the penalty. But going against the centuries-old convention, for what reason? For reasons that are not adequately described in this bill, we do not have a situation where we ought to be compromising these very, very long-held conventions that protect people against being obliged to incriminate themselves. There is no justification given in this bill. What this bill does, and in particular in this part, in the warrantless surveillance provisions, in the issues around production orders and the provisions that are made explicit in terms of production orders. The case has not been made that we need these sorts of provisions. They are major assaults on civil liberties, on privacy of individuals, of businesses in fact, indeed. The expectation of most New Zealanders that they can go about their business with a reasonable assurance of privacy. This bill does go too far. These provisions go far too beyond the pale, and we'll continue to oppose them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call Dennis O'Rourke.
Mr. Chairman, New Zealand First does not oppose